The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. I have my guest from bluefrontiers.com. His name is Randy Hencken. He's a director. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Richard. Thank you for hosting me today.
Yeah, no problem. So can you give listeners just a quick background on you personally, and then tell us what Blue Frontiers is about?
Sure. Well, my background is I've been fortunate enough to always find myself in fields and positions and jobs that are unusual and pushing the envelope a bit. And for the past 7 years, I've been working with the Sea Steading Institute. So if you haven't heard that word before, you have to think homesteading, but homesteading on the sea. And it's a nonprofit think tank that's been promoting human habitations at sea, where we can explore new ways of living together, including having new governments and all the other things that would fall underneath that category in terms of having a sustainable development that is safe and comfortable out at sea. Blue Frontiers is our new company that we started about a year ago after the Sea Steading Institute signed a historic agreement with the government of French Polynesia. At the Sea Steading Institute, we're a nonprofit think tank, and we do all of our work with donations. And now that we are trying to build the very first Sea-Stead, which we know will cost a considerable amount of money, we understand that needs to be done under a vehicle where people can expect some kind of return on their investment rather than just donation, which is why we launched Blue Frontiers. And I am one of 5 co-founders there. We got a team of 15 paid staff and nearly 100 professionals working on the project. We hope to launch in French Polynesia by the end of the decade, and we're also expanding our operations so that we can bring Sea-Steads elsewhere around the globe.
So what's why make a Sea-Stead? What's so good about it? Is it a collection of floating? I mean, it's not pontoons or anything, but is it like a man-made island, or is it a bunch of ships or a gigantic ship that everyone lives on? And what's the purpose?
Sure, great question, and this is one of the downsides of the podcast and not a video. Trying to get your listeners to imagine what a Sea-Stead could look like. A Sea-Stead technically could be any of those things. Anything that floats that somebody lives on, and they make it a permanent dwelling at sea could be a Sea-Stead. And we've definitely considered versions that are basically ships and other versions that are basically oil rigs. What we want to do in our first iteration is build something that's more like a barge. And these barge-like platforms that, sometimes we call them floating islands, sometimes we call them Sea-Steads, probably will be built with a type of concrete that can last for hundreds of years in the seawater. There's concrete that we've discovered is what Roman concrete is. And then we would have to use some high-grade marine stainless steel or some composite materials to hold that concrete together so it doesn't rust out. But our goal is, as opposed to a ship or an oil rig, we don't want to have to pull it out of the water every 5 or 20 years to have it repaired. We want it to be able to sit out there and be a permanent settlement. It's probably, a lot of people will hear me say that. They don't understand that concrete can float. It's just a matter of displacement. There are lots of large floating concrete structures in the world already. And then on top of these, we would be building residents and businesses and houses. And we'd also are looking to expand under the water so that I always imagine having my bedroom be underwater with a nice plexiglass window into the waterway, and I get to be the aquarium, and the fish will come by and look at me.
Why build at sea though? And the possibility of storms, you could have gigantic storms, and I mean, what's the romance of building at sea, or is there a more practical?
There are more practical reasons. And practically, we would station our floating islands, our Sea-Steads, in places that are unlikely to have really bad storms. And there's many of them. Particularly, our first project is designed to be within a reef break, within a lagoon or an atoll or in a bay, so we're not having to deal with hurricane-sized waves. But most of the planet lives near water. Most of the humans live near water. We're overcrowded, and we're losing our land to rising. So from a practical point of view, the technologies that we're integrating and offering and developing in this project will be needed by lots of humanity as we try to not become climate refugees and as we want to expand onto the waters in overcrowded situations. And then from a more philosophical point of view, the general idea is that all land is claimed, and it's all claimed by some nation. And it's very difficult to get a nation to change its policy at your whim. What we want to do is we want to create what we call sea zones. Think like a sea zone, a special economic zone, but at sea, where we've negotiated a deal with a host nation where they allow us some substantial set of autonomy within, the bounds of their own constitution or whatever regulatory framework, legal framework they have. And right. In that sea zone, we could explore new ways of governing ourselves. So there's a really high demand all around the world of people, looking for a better way of living, a better way of governing themselves, and they're tired of the failures of trying to change their own government. Or worse yet, they're tired of having to live under tyrannical governments. Now, I live in California. It's a pretty darn good country. I don't have a lot to complain about, but I'll tell you, the people that do reach out to us and want to be part of the project, many of them do. And if we can create what we see as a marketplace of governance by giving people sea zones and Sea-Steads, we can answer a really significant demand in the world, and we're idealistic. We think we can make this a better place.
I thought, I don't know the rules of the sea, but I thought that most governments claim part of the sea as their own up until about 12 miles away from their coast in international waters.
You are correct, and as I said, we are looking for relationships, like we have this relationship with French Polynesia, and we're in our early, our first move out to the water, we're not asking to be outside of a host nation. We're asking for a host nation to understand that there's a great bit of benefit to them to have us as their neighbor, because otherwise we wouldn't come. And when we do come, we bring with us environmental opportunities, social opportunities, economic opportunities. And in exchange for us bringing that, we ask for some modest autonomy. So opportunity for us to control the income streams, how our purse is spent, opportunities for us to choose how we import and export duties, these kind of things.
How do you anchor your structure so that it doesn't drift into the waters of any particular country or into an area that has storms? How do you keep it stationary?
It's again, we're just using off-the-shelf technologies. You got a barge out there. We will, we'll be within protected waters, so we're not in the open ocean just floating around, at least for our first projects. And, this generally means the waters aren't too deep, and we can put down a tension line and, basically screw ourselves into the earth and be fixated there. But the benefit of floating, rather than having, land reclamation or some other, being on land, is that we can also change. So as our neighborhoods grow and people want to adjust they can unconnect that tension line, unconnect that anchor, and haul their personal home to a different side of town or to a different seastead.
Makes sense, yeah. So you said around 2020, and with the government of French Polynesia, you're thinking your first structure may be ready?
I think that's our ambitious goal. It's going to take a little while to build, but we hope to be able to, we signed our deal in 2017. We've submitted, our side of the promise to them at this point. We're working on our design engineering. We're doing our fundraising. So we should be building by 2020. And either we'll be doing that, in collaboration with French Polynesia or one of many other locations that are suitable for our technologies.
And what are some of the parameters? How many people do you want it to house? How long do you hope it lasts? Is it going to have its own government? What are some of the features of it?
So the pilot project is designed to house 200 to 300 people on multiple platforms. Some of these would be, a single-family residence, while others would be, big community platforms. And I forgot the other part of your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was asking some of the parameters. How many people? So you said 200 or 300. What's your goal for how long the community will last, and will it become are you going to go for separate nation status, or what kind of legal status are you going to go for?
Yeah. So, we'd like to see this just be the first of many. We have a vision that there will be, first one seastead, and then dozens, and then thousands. It'll give people all kinds of opportunities to try different things in different places. Obviously, whenever we're in somebody's host waters, we will always be subject to their government, and our opportunity will be, some kind of private administration of our sea zone. Eventually, when the technologies are perfected and inexpensive enough, and we can manufacture them, it's plausible we could go out into the sea, probably on the equator where you don't have storms, and have cities out at sea that are their own nation. But that to me is a 2050 dream. I think we have to get through this first generation of sea zones first.
Well, one thing that came to mind, getting stuff, I understand you can trade and stuff can be brought to you. A big thing seems to be, what about the problem of waste or littering, people throwing stuff into the water? Because when you're on the sea, you're connected to the entire world, and the entire world's connected to you. So how do you reconcile some of the inhabitants, let's say, dumping stuff into the water, and maybe compromising all the world's oceans, or all the world's oceans dumping and arriving at your quote-unquote doorstep?
Mm-hmm. Well, sadly, that's what we're experiencing right now. The oceans are people's dumping grounds. We use them as superhighways. We use them as hunting grounds, and we use them to go and drill oil. And very rarely, only a small segment of the population puts the care into taking care of the ocean. I think most people don't put care into what fish they eat when they go to the market. They don't take into consideration, what happens to that plastic straw they use for their soda. And, those of us who are aware know about the great plastic gyres in the ocean. We think that when people live at sea, they will take better care of it, just like everybody tends to, not want to have a garbage dump in their own backyard. So we've put a lot of effort into how we're going to manage the resources on the first pilot project, including how we're dealing with our black water and our gray water, and how we're collecting rainwater, and how we're not spoiling the lagoon around us because of runoff, how we can turn our waste into energy, and how we can reduce what we bring onto the seastead to begin with, so that we don't have so much waste.
Okay. What do you think are going to be maybe the top 2 or 3 issues that these communities are going to have to deal with? Maybe you mentioned them already. I don't know. Do you think waste will be one of them, or what do you think the biggest problems will be?
Yeah, it's not. One of the best things is that the technologies all exist already. We just have to integrate them in a way that hasn't been integrated before. So I think that once we launch the first several, it'll become easier to launch the next. Just like the first cell phone was some giant box that only the very wealthy carried around. and now we all have computers in our pockets. I think our first Sea-Steads will cost more than the second Sea-Steads. There will be more beta testing and things that will break that we'll have to fix over time and get ready for the next ones. I think that once people come and visit and spend some time with us, and maybe not everybody wants to come and be at the first one permanently, but they want to come there for a month at a time. As long as we have the sufficient comforts that we're used to, communications, food, that we're in nice places, I think that people will find this to be a very attractive lifestyle. And we're only looking for, we don't need everybody to adopt it. Eventually, I think lots of people will adopt it as it becomes a better opportunity or a better option than existing opportunities. But in the as I said, the first pilot project, 200 to 300 people. If it's 100 people that live there and another couple hundred that come through a month at a time, doing a more timeshare type engagement with it, I think that will be a great success. And then, there will be high demand to make more Sea-Steads in more locations.
And then, do people apply to be on the Sea-Stead? Do they have to pay a certain amount of money? How do they get to be one of those 200 or 300 people that are picked?
So we're putting together a program that will, balance the, people's desires with, the needs of the Sea-Stead. So there's we want to be inclusive of as many people as we can. Obviously, costs are a consideration, and trying to create a space that is, inviting and not ruined by one bad actor. We don't want to, in close quarters, we don't want to mistakenly invite somebody in who makes it uncomfortable for everybody else. So we get thousands of people writing to us expressing interest in having some sort of involvement, and these can be really novel, interesting engineers working on really high tech problems to retired chefs who want to be the cook on the Sea-Stead. So I think like any community, it'll have a large ecosystem of people with different talents, different skills, different backgrounds. And one of my more favorite things about the project, like right now, of the 5 co-founders, we're from 4 different nations. Of the dozen people on staff, so it's add another 3 nations to it. And the people that came to our gathering, we're up to 17 nations. We have different languages being spoken, different. We're all coalescing around an idea. We're not coalescing around the tribe that we happen to have been born into. Right. And I think that creates this really interesting dynamic that is a first pass on the way to a better future, where people aren't building fences to say I'm different from you.
Okay, very good. So what's the best way for interested people to contact you to find out if they could apply, to ask questions, to become a donor, et cetera? How do they get in touch?
Sure. So blue-frontiers.com is the place to come and learn about the Blue Frontiers project. We are planning a token sale, so that's how people can buy in and participate in the project in the coming months. That should happen in May if we hit our target. And then we are also working on building this online community. We already, as I said, had nearly 100 people that have give their professional services to work on critical problems for the project, and we're expanding our capacity to work with these kinds of people. So, come to blue-frontiers.com, and we'll be happy to grow our community with people.
Well, very good. Well, Randy, thanks for coming on the podcast, and certainly interesting what you're working on. It'll be very cool to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll get to have you come hang out with me and have a drink on a Sea-Stead someday.
That'd be pretty cool. Thank you.
The Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference is coming to Dallas, Texas, February 16, 17, and 18 in 2018. If you know of a better way to get the latest insider knowledge about crypto, to hear directly from the top minds in this field, to interact personally with 800 fellow crypto lovers, hodlers, investors, miners, traders, developers, and founders, then I'd like to hear about it. If you don't, then you don't want to miss out. Register today for the Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Blockchain Super Conference. Go to bitcoinsuperconference.com and register today as a super early bird to get the lowest rates on tickets and hotel rooms. That's bitcoinsuperconference.com.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.